Hello and welcome. My name is Michelle Lawton. I'm the founder of Joyful Plate Food and Beverage Branding and Education in New York City since 2010. And for the past 25 years, I've been thinking deeply about the way consumers and people, human beings, eat and drink. And that's led me to write my first book, Moderating a Love Affair with Food, 10 Tips to Mindful Eating and Drinking, this past fall. And in the process, I've met two very talented women that I'm thrilled to have here today with me. Lynn Stewart. Hello, Lynn. Welcome.
Hello.
Lynn's a dietitian and counselor and cook on the East Coast, and Karuna Carrera, a national board certified health and wellness coach on the West Coast.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, so thank you so much for being here. We met almost 2 years ago now.
Wow.
And it's been a really wonderful relationship that's built, and I've introduced, the two of you, and I'm really grateful to come together today to discuss this topic, living in the gray, which we'll get to in a moment. But first, Lynn, if you could just tell us a little bit about your extensive background and career.
As a dietitian, I've had a wide range of experience. I've done wellness counseling for New York City Financial people, and I've done bariatric wellness counseling for Medicaid residents. I've sort of gone to both extremes, plus everyone in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And where I stand right now is sort of trying to figure out what's the best thing that a dietitian can do to help our country, the United States, given the horrendous epidemic of obesity that's going on, and where the food industry fits into that. Because they're going to have a part to play in that. I'm not quite sure what it is yet.
Right.
But somewhere along the line, it's got to settle in, and we've got to get into a clearer direction.
So welcome. Thank you, Lynn. Karuna?
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much, Michelle, for doing this and, kind of having us chat about this. It's a close topic to my heart as, I am a national board certified health and wellness coach, but my journey started way back when I was in India. I studied the subject. I always had a liking in the culinary sciences, so I explored that. I had my own journey to lose weight. I had my own relationship with food that I kind of bettered, I would say, with all the tools that I gained. But currently, my job is trying to kind of bridge the gap between the knowing and the doing. And that's exactly where I am helping my patients, adding the behavioral aspect. We know what to do. We know what's right for us. We do it for a while. But then we cannot make it a sustainable part of our lifestyle. So that's my mission, where we are trying to help create that sustainability, and of course it all starts in the kitchen, right? That's the heart of the house, and that's the heart of the home. So that's where we are trying to make a change.
Yeah, that's lovely. That's a great place to start. We were just talking on the warm up for the calls, like, we never can underestimate the power of food and how food can make positive changes in life. And I think, ultimately at the end of the call, we're trying to come up with some types of, solutions because, it's a time where there are a lot of problems to be solved, but food can make positive change. So thank you, Karuna. So the topic of today's discussion is living in the gray. And I served this up to you both a couple weeks ago because that was actually the premise of my book is how do you moderate this, what I have, a love affair with food and wine. I grew up as in my career working with fine wine, champagne. I was at all white tablecloth restaurants. And, as a kid in the candy shop, I used to have Grand Cuvée champagne in my fridge at 29 years of age and, tasting fin de Claire oysters and, all of that fancy kind of food. So, that's where food can be, culture and pleasure, right? But, in order to lead a healthy life, we need to moderate and find balance. So living in the gray is just using dry January as a metaphor. So here we are in February. We're coming out of this month that dry January has been a massive global phenomenon. My understanding is that it started about 10 years ago in the UK. A couple thousand people decided to, experiment with this, and then every year around the world, it's been growing in popularity. And years ago, being in the biz, I went dry for January with my partner. He's Irish. And, it pretty much worked, but inevitably I'd be on some business trip and someone would make a reservation, 3 weeks into it. And, I would call him, I remember from San Francisco saying, okay, it's over. I've done enough. I've deprived myself and, now I want to enjoy. So I guess the point is I'm not alone. Apparently, 40% of Americans in 2023 said that they wanted to either abstain or, reduce alcohol consumption. But yet at the end of the month, maybe 15, 20% actually were successful. So I just started thinking about not only the, alcohol component, but also the food component. And I know that's where you two, have so much depth of experience. We always hear that it's so hard to go on a diet because diets are talking about
Diets don't work.
take away and diets don't work. And, that deprivation. What we've been talking about, and the premise of this book is like, how do you eat mindfully, joyfully for life? How do you set yourself up for success? Lynn, you wrote the foreword to my book, and you said, if we can achieve portion control and frequency.
You need anything you want
simple.
as long as you can manage frequency and amount.
Yeah. And, it sounds so simple, right? But Karuna, and all of your, the work that you do with your clients, they're desperate for solutions. We are in this age of really needing balance in our lives, not only with food and beverage, but, we're spoiled for choice. We have so much technology at our disposal. We really can find a better way. So the premise of, a couple of things that I've come up with in the book are feeding yourself for fuel, making sure in the beginning of the week that you fuel yourself with having at your disposal in your kitchen, good fruits, vegetables, getting yourself ready to prepare and nourish yourself. So fueling so that you could kind of perform. We're Americans and we live in this, kind of high performance society. Most of us are working. If we have 9-to-5 jobs, so we need that kind of, fuel to nourish ourselves. But yet, just eating broccoli and cottage cheese and, plain yogurt could get a little boring after a while. So also
It's very, very boring after a while.
So that, I talk about this, Lynn, it's like we need food for fun too. We're surrounded by restaurants in our society. There's so much entertainment in food. And so I think that's where I personally have struggled because, how much, where's the point of limiting yourself,
I have an answer. Have an answer.
How do we solve for this?
Our first conversation had to do with a French marketer. He teaches marketing out of Paris, Pierre Chandon.
Mm-hmm.
And he has, for the last 15 years, been selling a concept to the food industry, as he puts it, not terribly successfully, that pleasure, the source of pleasure, should come from quality, not quantity. Mm-hmm. I went back and reviewed his link this morning. He puts out a test. You can actually grade yourself on a scale. Are you an Epicurean eater or a visceral eater, supersized eater? Supersized has a bad connotation in our country. But somebody who, looks more to quantity than to quality, we'll say. But he wrote at the end of last year, just a recap of his position, and he included a link to the test. I'll send it to you. You can put it in the show notes.
Yes.
And anyone who's listening to the podcast, or the two of you, if you're interested, can take his test. But as I've listened to you talk, and Karina,
Pleasure, but
Corona.
allowing ourselves.
But where's your source of pleasure?
Right.
Is it the quality of the food or the quantity of food? Because deprivation means you go on one extreme, and indulgence means you go on the other extreme. But if you can get into the middle and think about quality and quantity, I think it gives people more of a fighting chance.
Absolutely. I mean, that's been my premise in enjoying wine. While box wine and cases of beer may be great for like a big barbecue party, it doesn't always give the opportunity for reflection. So, if you're home cooking and you have a special bottle that you have been researching, I know I'm going to a Lunar Year celebration next week in Chinatown, and so I've bought this special Riesling because I'm really looking forward to enjoying, like sitting down and enjoying the whole combination of the flavors. It's going to be probably spicy food, maybe a little bit of rich food, and so the epicure in me says, okay, well, this is a moment to really enjoy and think in advance. So I know that I'm in a position to do that. I hang out with a lot of foodies and sommeliers, but maybe like Karuna, how do we break this down to everyday life? So certainly the connoisseurs are looking for that type of quality and pleasure, but what would you tell your clients who maybe might feel guilty? They're trying to lose weight, and they, like you were telling us before, you come into January and it's like an all or nothing thing, and then that doesn't always work out so well, does it?
No, it doesn't. And I think there are just so many elements and so many different layers when it comes to living in the gray, or kind of managing this whole system, as I say, around us, because there's just not one aspect. It could be a celebration, it could be a special event, it could be anything, whether it's a happy emotion or not a happy emotion, it's always associated with food. And that's how we are, that's how we've grown up, and that's how everything around us is food. Like even when, and I think it goes back to a lot of mindset shift that we are trying to work towards more than anything else. It reminds me of little kids, right? When you take them to get their annual shots, the mom is always like, okay, get your shot, stop crying, I'll get you a candy. So the reinforcement is always food, right? There's always food associated. And it goes back to that same example that I share with all my clients is, what happens when you tell a small toddler, no, don't do this?
Right.
They'll do it all the more, or they'll be intrigued to do it all the more. So it's that same mindset, only thing we are adults now. So when we restrict ourselves, when we go into that all or nothing behavior pattern and we restrict ourselves and say, no, I'm not going to do this. It's January, I'm going to watch it through. I'm going to stick with it. I can't give this up. You crave it more.
Right.
It's just how we are, right?
Yeah, it's so complicated because there's the deprivation and the discipline aspect, right?
I have a suggestion. I remember now, it's been a long time since I did one-on-one counseling, but it worked very successfully when I used to tell clients, when you decide you're going to indulge, you look at what you want to indulge in and you say, I have decided to indulge.
Yes.
Because what that does is it takes the power back into the person, as opposed to the power being in that thing that's tempting you.
Absolutely.
Now, as Corona said, when you're a little kid and your parents say no, you were taking your life in your hands to look at mom and say, I have decided to indulge anyway.
Yes.
But as adults, we can do that.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
like looking at it at eating positively. Like, isn't that
Mhm.
ultimately what we're talking about here? Is looking at-
Positively, and it's your decision.
and it's your
You,
decision.
you
And
can
what is
you
the-
can
what is the
decide to
joy?
eat negatively if
Yeah.
you decide to eat negatively.
And you know, I talk about this a lot in the book because I started thinking about both the joy, but then also sometimes the peer pressure among your friends and also your family.
That's big.
When it's huge when it comes to
Big.
food. So you know, it's my business what I decide to put in my mouth, and it's no one else's business, right?
Absolutely.
And so, you know, if I'm out with my girlfriends and I say, oh, school night, you know, I'm having one drink, you know, and that's it. It's not I mean, you know, easier said than done. And I'll confess, you know, it's sometimes really challenging because you know, you get into the moment and celebrations are supposed to be about fun. But I was listening to a podcast this morning and they were talking about the importance of journaling and saying, you know, when I don't pay attention when I and fill in the blank, overdrink or overeat, then I feel X, you know, like really being aware of your feelings. Or, you know, when you're at the holiday party and, you know, someone says, oh, you need to try my pavlova. You know, you need to try this cake because I baked it all day long, or this, you know, casserole, green bean
And there's
casserole,
a
whatever it is.
big piece.
And you think about it culturally through generations and generations, the beauty is that, you know, our lives are historically, like you said, centered around food. I mean, food is so important to our existence, but at the same time, it's come over the years with so much baggage because, you know, people use, like you said, parents will use it as a way to, you know, discipline. I mean, it just goes on and
Yeah,
on. So
it
how do we
does.
simplify it? And I've learned through this process of writing this book that there's really power in appreciating how to fuel yourself, but then also how to provide pleasure. And then, you know, feeling confident enough to share with other people when you're dining out about what's right for you. I mean,
Absolutely.
even in your own home, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like just because my partner is having, you know, a slice of key lime pie, or you know, doesn't mean that I have to. If we both want to, fine. But it's pretty complex stuff. When you really
It
start to
is.
think about it.
Yeah, and kind of going back to what you mentioned about journaling, I think another tip that I always share and you know try to talk to my clients is about paying attention to set the intention, right? So it's always, you know, you have to take, and that's that moment of where your work comes in, where you have to pay attention to be like, okay, how am I going to feel after making this choice? How do I want to feel after making this choice? If I'm eating that and I feel crappy afterwards, you know you're not in that positive space. But if I want to look at it differently and be like, wait, you know, I don't want to eat it now. I don't want to eat it today. I'll probably keep it and have a bite later on. It's not going anywhere. Right. So then that relationship starts drifting from, as Lynn rightly mentioned, of you having more control over your choices rather than the other way around. And that's what we want to kind of, you know, make people aware is what are you trying to achieve by making these healthy choices or making a change in the way you eat or cook. Like, what is your end goal? What's your purpose of making this change? Do you want to feel a certain way? Are you doing it for yourself? Are you doing it for your family? Are you doing it for health reasons? Do you want your numbers to go down? Like, what is your why? So once we start helping them understand their why and connecting it to the change that they want to make, it just gives them a little bit more intentionality, and helps them kind of stop in the path and be like, wait, I'm not going to eat this now. Let's make another choice. Or if I am eating this, let me cut down on the portions, like Lynn mentioned, right? Like the portion control. So then
Yeah.
all of those ingrained thoughts and habits kind of surface up once we start helping them identify their big why.
And I'll just share from personal experience. My why was a little bit of that, fear that the doctor put in me post-pandemic. I walked out of the doctor's office and he said, blood pressure is a little high, pulse is a little high. You might want to lose, 8-10 pounds. And I was kind of arrogant. I said, who, me? Joyful plate? I've been biking and cooking and, I know how to do this. But I realized that, I'm too young to have problems. And if I want to enjoy a long, healthy life and I'm in the business, going to all these shows, tasting all these things, I better watch my ways. And so I know in my market research that I've done with a lot of, corporations and listening to consumers, sometimes you need to be pushed to that extreme of someone, frightening you and scaring you. I know this has happened in smoking cessation and, a lot of behavioral, clinical work, that sometimes you just need to be pushed to that limit to say, okay, I need to make change. And that was a negative feeling. But now, almost 2 years later, I do have it in control. I have, it's a heart healthy month. I have my blood pressure cuff at home. I probably could lose a couple more pounds, but at least now I have a rhythm. I know I'm staying within like 5 pounds because I realize once you go too far, it's so hard to come back. And so it's much easier to have mindfulness.
Easier to stay in the gray.
To stay in the gray, like to bring it back to that, that gray. And now it's like a pleasure. Now I realize like, well, I'm in my 50s, maybe I can live like this the rest of my life. So, what a powerful feeling, to be
absolutely, more in control, and the other thing that just I want to share before we kind of wrap up is that once we connect with that why and we connect with that purpose, it just gives a positive vibe, and we just suddenly feel more empowered, right? We feel like, okay, as you rightly said, like we are more in control because we suddenly have this aha moment of like, yes, this is something I can do. And that all or nothing habit, or that, all of these different aspects also comes from a space of setting unrealistic goals. Like if I know that my lifestyle is a certain way, where I'm going out, I'm entertaining, I'm doing all of this is my identity. This is my identity. And if I set an unrealistic goal of saying I'm not going to do X, Y, and Z, it won't happen. And then, we kind of get frustrated with the whole process. So, that's another thing that I encourage everybody to be like, what is it for you? Like, what's your identity, and how are you going to set your goals that are realistic for you, right? Yes, my friend did it and did so much and lost a lot of weight. Like, yes, I love to eat, I love to cook, I love trying out new restaurants, I love doing all of that. But I know I cannot do it in a way that I'm doing it every day, right? So it's a happy medium. It's that happy gray space where you're like, okay, I don't want to give this up, but then I don't even want this extreme. So let's find a happy medium and a happy spot, and I think that's what I try to share with all my clients. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah, and it can be a happy medium. And I think I was listening to a podcast earlier. They say it takes like 21 days or so to change behaviors and to set a course. Maybe
sometimes longer.
Sometimes longer, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes longer. And what a wonderful journey to get to know yourself better. Like that was chapter 1 of my book, is love yourself inside and out, and realize that, we need to, just part of being human is to learn how we feel, put your hand on your, on your wrist and, check your pulse. Pay attention inside now to what's happening. A chiropractor told me a long time ago. So You know, I think that we need this in our culture today. You know, we started off talking about consumer packaged goods, and listen, I mean, you know, we we are spoiled for choice. There's probably been,
Spoiled for choice, but
I
we
mean-
can't give up on pleasure and enjoyment.
no.
I mean, pleasure and enjoyment have to be a component of a healthy eating pattern. I mean, it's not just all about nutrition, and it's not just all about, you know, some other things that you could add in there. But pleasure and enjoyment have to be a component.
Yes, because otherwise, you know, I mean, we're missing out on
Well,
the best
most
parts
of
of
all,
life.
it won't work.
Right. And then also, like, how do we use the convenience to our advantage? You know, like, how do we think about?
Well, the food industry should really step up to the plate and make convenience. Take advantage of people wanting to eat healthy nutritionally, eat healthy through pleasure. They don't have time to cook. There is so much the food industry can do to push that forward. You know, instead of marketing multicolor cereal and some of the other crazy things. Tell you what's encouraging. Started following people who have left the food industry or they're starting little consulting, like yourself.
Mhm.
These little consulting agencies. I mean, there's a lot of very bright people out there.
So in summary, you know, gray could be a colorful place, like living in the gray.
Nicely
could
put.
be, yeah, a way forward. And how do we take it, you know, instead of looking negatively at what's happening in our culture, you know, turn this into a positive for sustainable living.
Absolutely.
So thank you.
Yes.
Chapter
That was
1,
well put.
and look forward to continuing this conversation. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody. A total, absolute pleasure.
Thank you.